Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Human Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and in an amazing turn up the books, I'm looking at a fairly recent human game played between Stremavicius and Keymer in the Lithuania-Germany match from the recent Olympiad in Budapest. Just caught my eye whilst I was looking at the Olympiad and analysed it with the engines, found some interesting things, and really nice to share. So let's have a look at the game. It started d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, and now h6. h6, modern chess. What on earth is that? Well, h6 is the sort of move where it might turn out to be 100% useful, it might turn out to be 75% useful, or it might turn out to be a positive hindrance to your play. The first two scenarios are kind of more likely. It's more likely to be kind of useful. But yeah, you're not 100% sure about that yet. However, what it does do is, for example, it prevents the move bishop g5 from white, so it's definitely cutting out some alternatives. And of course, what black's doing, black's waiting to commit himself. Black can play a Nimzo-Indian type position. If white goes knight c3, black can go back to any sort of queen's gambit with d7 to d5. Or black could play something a bit Queen's Indian-y as well if you wanted, with b6, just depending on what white is doing. It's sort of a high-class waiting move, and I mean the move h6 will probably never not be it will never be useless. But the question is, how useful is it, and how can white exploit this? Can white exploit the extra time that you're giving him? And I've got a couple of things to say about that. I mean, first of all, this this type of system, it's not unknown at all, even in other lines. There was one line of the French that I played a lot. Knight d2, h6 in this position, and this is again one of those half waiting moves. It might turn out to be useful, and it often was when white closed the centre with e5. Then black played g5, and if the white knight had gone to f3, you got a head start for getting in g5 to g4 to chase away the knight. It can also turn out to be a bit of a useless, wasted move, and you just end up running after events after. The other thing that it made me think of was that in 1997 I prepared for the very strong Estonian player Jan Elvist, and one thing I noticed about Elvist games was that often in the opening I was very focused on really super efficient play. Every move has a purpose, trying to get the maximum out of every opening move. And you often saw that he, just wasted tempo, and you couldn't really understand why. But on the other hand, it didn't really seem to matter that much, and you didn't understand why either. I didn't really dive into it philosophically at the time, but I think if there's one thing that engines have taught us, is that there's a lot of reasonable opening systems, and that there's probably a lot more leeway in the opening phase than we ever thought, in the 90s. The one thing about it is that, with a move like h6, what you often notice is that, little tactics that maybe, you had a pet line of d5, and, there's a line there that relies on some little tactics to get you to equality. Yeah, those are the sort of things that then don't work when you've spent a half tempo on h6 already, because you're always, slightly behind, and white's played one extra move that covers that stuff. So that's the thing you've got to deal with. But on the other hand, you might easily end up in a line where this move h6 was played on move 12 or 13 normally anyway, and then you're great, and you've also avoided some other white possibilities as well. So what did white play? In this position, white played the move g3. Looking at a couple of other possibilities, just mention that after knight c3, a few different lines, but bishop b4, e3, and now this line is mentioned by Torch, and it's playing the Nimzo-Indian in the good old-fashioned way, like Nimzovich used to do, taking the knight on c3 early, getting those double pawns, and then trying to put up a dark square pawn chain in the centre. Why would you do this, and why would it be okay after wasting a tempo on h6? Well, the point is that if this knight was on g1, white would have played the bishop to d3 and the knight to e2, and then gone for a very quick e4 and f4, gaining huge amounts of space in the center, getting that f pawn up and moving, getting after castling kingside, getting the rook on f1 involved. I've played many games like this with white. However, with a knight on f3, you can't actually do that. The knight's blocking the f-pawn. So white's play is a lot slower. Actually, wasting a move with h6 has actually improved this version of the position for black. I mean, if you ask me, which move would I play as white, I like the move a3 very much. Because I think that a3 is going to be more useful for white in lots of Queen's Gambit positions than the move h6. And I mean, if black tries to play for a Queen's Indian, well, we're into a Petrojan Queen's Indian with a3. But black never plays h6. So, that must be a very good chance for white to get an advantage. And if you go d5, knight c3, for example, if we play a Queen's Gambit declined with bishop f4, obviously we can't play bishop g5, but bishop f4 is also a main line. Well, a3 is always played in those systems, and h6 not so much. So, that would be quite a good chance. There's the possibility to go back into a semi-Slav and claim, haha, you can't play the bishop g5 semi-Slav, which is true. But you could, if you just want to be sensible, I mean, Crazy Leela would probably look at g4 in this position. But if you want to be sensible, you can just go for a Moran type structure, because at the very least, black, these lines where black plays b5, the typical Moran, these are much, much better for white, because, black doesn't have the possibility of going b4 and driving this knight away from c3. I mean, white often plays the move a3 to stop that. So, plenty of possibilities there. I mean, there's also the possibility of playing moves like c5, because you've got, b4 ready and supported to support it. Just try and really gain some space there. It's there's possibilities there, but the move a3 would be my tip. It's only been played about 20 times, I think, in the database, but I quite like it. But it's not the engine's favourite move, certainly. Stremavicius played the move that the engines like the most, which is g3, heading back into a Catalan. To be honest, I don't know really, because what Keymer does is he plays this system that I've actually played a lot against the Catalan. Very solid, just reinforce the pawn structure. I'm sure Mr. Beads is shouting semi-Slav at the screen right now. Just block out the bishop on g2, and then what you're going to aim for is you're going to aim to play the bishop to b7 or to a6 there, and try and force white to play c takes d5 there. So I played this a lot without the pawn on h6, and the fact that the pawn's on h6 and white's got an extra development move, knight c3, that gives white some interesting possibilities, and that's what Stremavicius goes for in this game. Plays the move knight e5, hitting c6. Keymer took on e5, d takes e5, opening up the d file, and after knight d7, takes, and now e4, trying to blast open that center. And at first sight, this looks really dangerous for black. I mean, we're threatening e takes d5, and if you go d takes e4, then everything's sort of open, right? And black's in a lot of difficulties here. But black's actually got a typical trick here. I've actually used it in my games before, and it's the move d4. Whoa, d4, just giving up a pawn, right? Indeed, giving up a pawn, but the point is that the pawn on e5 now will be quite tricky for white to defend with the bishop on f4, and black's idea is just long term to drive back the white pieces and then recapture the pawn on e5 with the knight. Yeah, I mean, white's got a lot of development somehow. Black somehow not so much, right, with the bishop still on c8. So you do sort of wonder, I mean, can you really get away with that? But the answer seems to be, in principle, yes, you can. Now, I do wonder whether Keymer actually mixed up his move orders a little bit here, because what was possible was to play the move bishop c5. And after rook dd1, black plays the move g5. Yes, shocking, I know. And after bishop c1, then you're going back into the normal main lines. What Keymer did was play the move g5. Now, I mean, bishop c1 would lead into the main line. This is what the engine wants. Bishop a6. And then at some stage the queen is going to get out, and we're threatening to take on e5. This is it's actually very similar to something you'll see later. A game Stockfish against Torch against Stockfish, where black's got a lot of activity here for the 2 pawns, and of course a pawn there that's always for the taking. So yeah, the engines were surviving this quite nicely. A lot of games in this line. And I think that bishop a6 is a novelty. I think that queen c7 was played before. But playing the move g5 before bishop c5 gives white an extra possibility, which was taken by Stremavicius, which is bishop a3, which was a novelty. And out of Hayek's book as well here. So but it's a very sensible idea. And the point is, after bishop c5, white isn't retreating the rook. White's just playing queen e2, defending the bishop on e3 and getting ready to retreat the rook afterwards, but yeah, having protected the bishop on e3. It's one of those really weird things of modern theory that you see what Vincent Keymer did. He played queen e8, slightly strange move. The engines want queen e7, and at no point will any engine suggest bishop takes d4. But when you say, well, what is bishop takes d4 like? Big advantage for white, right? They just say, no, still fine for black, but yeah, just don't fancy it. Just taking that material, it just shows how, anti-materialistic engines have become, because, basically what they sort of feel is that, this tension between the bishop, the rook, and the white dark squared bishop, that's sort of, keeping white under check. So by far the nicest thing is to try and just keep that in there, recapture the pawn on e5, and have a nice, steady, as normal position as possible. When you play bishop takes d4, it's not necessarily making black's position much worse, but it is releasing that tension and giving white plenty of opportunity to start targeting these weak kingside pawns on dark squares. And for example, this is a typical continuation between Torch and Stockfish, and you can see, white's able here to start attacking these pawns, reroute the bishop to there with complete freedom, at the same time keeping an eye on that b6 pawn, which is on dark square as well. So somewhat tricky, and black's got a bit of fancy footwork to do to get out of this with a decent position. I mean, Stockfish manages it, and Torch does too as black, but still, not super great. So what the engines prefer is just to keep the tension on, keep this uncertainty in the position, and just focus on regaining a pawn rather than trying to win the exchange. And this is queen e7 is supposed to be sort of okay for black. What Keymer did was queen e8, and I wonder there as well whether he got his lines slightly mixed up. I mean, the point of queen e8 is that eventually, after something like queen h5 later, black, not now, right now, but in the future, has got sometimes some ideas like f5, opening up the line of the queen just for a quick exchange. And if white plays a move like queen takes h6, then black's often got ideas like the rook coming to a7 and then harassing the queen, just with rook over to h7, a7, after the black knight, of course, has taken on e5. These lines are quite far in advance, but obviously, you've got to make a choice about where you're going to put the queen now. I mean, you need to get the queen off that d file in order to be able to take on e5. And Keymer makes this choice queen e8, but the engines don't like that at all. And why don't the engines like that? Well, they say, let's offer the exchange on another square, rook d6. And the point is that if knight e5, I mean, White's got a couple of ideas. I mean, bishop c5 is possible. This rook's good on d6, also stopping a bishop coming out to a6. You could even consider these moves here. So just get a dark squared bishop, two bishops and a pawn, and then yeah, you're ready to start attacking some dark squares with whatever means you want. What the engines say, well, engines feel that they need to take the exchange, but this is pretty dangerous somehow. I mean, exchange for a pawn, two bishops, and you're already going to start thinking about attacking this weakened black king side. Engines managed to hold it somehow, or rather Torch managed to hold it against Obsidian. Obsidian didn't manage to hold it against Torch, so I think you can see there's quite a bit of danger there. But White played the slightly safer rook d2. Keymer played bishop a6. And now this move queen d1. And now Keymer did something maybe a little bit strange. I mean, knight takes c5 was played. I mean, actually, one of the nice points of queen e8 is that you can play, whoops, not f6. You can play the move bishop takes e3. And after rook takes d7, the queen is not attacked by anything, so you can actually get away with this and play bishop c5. And this was really the move that, for me, this would be if I was playing with black, it would be the first move I'd want to look at. I've got the two bishops, and if I just get a move like rook d8 in, I'll swap off rooks. I'm happy playing that endgame. I mean, it would be hard for you to defend the pawn on e5 anyway, and I'll have lots of possibilities for attacks with the two bishops. The engines go for a pretty complex and specific line. Bishop e2, distracting the queen from the defense of the rook. Queen d2, bishop b4, and attacking the queen again. And if you go something like queen d4, well, I've got all sorts of moves. Bishop b5 is interesting, forking these two. But what the engines do there is this move knight b6. So bishop b4 has undefended this pawn on b6. It's all details. And we get this position, bishop f3, rook d8. And basically, I mean, black ends up just winning this pawn back on e5. And black's a pawn down, but with opposite coloured bishops. And, well, we know from the engines that it's not always so clear opposite coloured bishops, but this is a very good sort of those positions for black. I mean, very hard for white to advance any queenside pawns. Even if he does, it'd be easy to blockade it on the dark squares, and we're going to have plenty of opportunities to attack some sensitive squares near to the white king. So this is just going to end up as a draw. No problems at all. Not even difficult for human players. But Keymer went for something much sharper. He went for knight takes e5, takes. And I imagine probably that, the feeling of being, 200 points higher rated. Keymer's 27-30. The young German, and Stremavicius is 25-27. Sort of probably made him feel like, yeah, I need to keep some life in this position somehow. Yeah, I mean, I need to, I don't want to go for, a slightly worse pawn down endgame. I've got some chances here, right? I mean, I've got possible squares. I've got squares here. Okay, position's a bit loose. I've got a few pawn weaknesses, but yeah, I can play this for all three results. I get the feeling that this is really, how he was kind of thinking. But it's risky, and what Stremavicius does superbly here is really go for it. So I think, if you sat back with white, you could easily just, with those open lines, you could find white sort of, you could find black sort of getting lots of activity, and suddenly you're in trouble. But he really goes for it. So f4, first of all, attacking the king side. And after knight e3, he comes up with a really nice line. I mean, Torch liked the move queen c1 and comes up with a very similar idea to what Stremavicius does. But what Stremavicius does is a really, very typical human move, or human move when the human's thinking really well. He played queen f3, and after knight g2, didn't recapture, played the move f takes g5. This is really neat. You're opening up the king side, and this knight on g2 is trapped. Brilliant. And, well, h takes g5 is played, and now the really cool follow-up, which is this move e5. And what you're doing with e5? Well, the queen is stopping the bishop from coming to b7, and playing e4 to e5 frees this e4 square, so the knight can come round to e4 to f6. I mean, I love this idea. When I saw it, that's what made me want to analyze this game. I thought, oh, that is lovely. Haven't seen this sort of thing before, with a knight trapped on g2 like that. Torch had a very similar idea, but with the queen on c1, which has got pluses and minuses. But I think this is really this would be the move that I would think if humans are going to play an idea like this, they'll play the queen over to f3, because getting the knight into e4 is so cool. So Keymer defended very, very well, actually. He played rook b8, so you're looking to try and get in bishop b7. Knight e4 played, and now it looks like curtains, right? This knight's coming into f6. King's in huge trouble, but black has this lovely resource f5. I mean, if you go knight f6, I'll just take it off and go bishop b7, and then get my queen into c6, and we've got a big counterattack here. But yeah, by playing f5, white can play e takes f6, but now a white pawn is blocking this f6 square, so this knight on e4 is no longer that dangerous, and black gets to deal with the immediate threat with bishop b7 and queen g6. So yeah, I mean, what's the situation? Well, black's a pawn down, but it's got quite a nice pin here. And also this pawn on f6, once you take the knight on e4, then the pawn's going to go. The only problem is that, black does have a lot of weak pawns here. So you've got to be a little bit careful. I mean, you might eventually take this knight on e4 and recapture the pawn on f6. But when you do so, you really do want to exchange off the queens. I mean, major piece positions, they're all about king safety. So if you've got the queens on particularly, you've got to have a safe king, and black does not want to have a king like this with queen and two rooks against queen and two rooks. If you've just got the two rooks on, then rook endings, with open files and activity, weak pawns tend to get exchanged off for decent pawns, so it's much less scary. But yeah, you don't want to end up swapping off the keeping the queens on in this sort of position. I mean, here Stremavicius played a move that looks a little bit odd in some ways, and actually not a single engine wanted it. All the engines wanted rook e1 somehow. And Stremavicius played the move rook e2. Why is it odd? I mean, in some ways it's normal. It's getting the rook out of the long diagonal, so starting to unpin there. But it's just that, when you play rook e1, you've really got a threat of playing rook f2 here and protecting the pawn. But when you play rook e2, you're not threatening rook f1, protecting the pawn, because of bishop a6. Or the bishop can move to any wherever it is, it can move to the a6 f1 diagonal. So yeah, somehow you're not really actually giving not quite 100% sure what the next what the threat is somehow. That's the point I'm trying to make, I guess. Yeah, after rook e2, the engines had various ideas. I mean, bishop e4 is possible. Rook takes e4, queen f6. You're hitting b2, so you'll play like this. And yeah, the engines thought that this was going to be fine. You're going to d2 and rook f2. You'll lose a few pawns along the way, but you'll get perpetual check on the 7th. Another type of idea that you see a lot after rook e1, actually, just to show you, is to play the move bishop d5 first of all. So you're threatening rook b4, so white plays a3 to stop it, and now you take on e4 and play this sort of position. And what's the idea? Why have you played why have you forced the pawn to a3? Well, you just see that white's no longer able to play b3 because the pawn's no longer on a2. So this pawn on b2 is much more difficult to defend and much easier to attack. For example, this is one-line games between Torch and Obsidian. Rook d1, rook b1. Yeah, you can't play the move b3, so you're going to be winning this pawn. And white can end up with an extra pawn or whatever, but the engines always manage to hold all this somehow. So that's kind of what was possible. But I mean, here you can see that I think you can see that Keymer, wasn't in really good form in the Olympiad, because he played a move, and it's the type of thing that I've often done, where you're not feeling great, you're not feeling on top of your game, but instead of just trying to be sensible, you're always straining to try and recover, get back somehow. And you play a move that makes sense in terms of winning, but that kind of ruins your position, ruins something important in your position. And he played the move c4, which I'm pretty sure was all about, let's try and pin this pawn down to b2 and we can see what can happen some stage. Yeah, I think that was kind of it. But it now allows white to play the move rook f1, because you've closed this a6 f1 diagonal, so you've no longer got bishop a6, and it just means that now this pawn's protected. White's got an extra pawn, and well, you're threatening to unpin. I mean, if black doesn't have that, then it's really dangerous. And of course, you've even taken away the possibility of attacking, the knight on e4 by playing a rook to b4, because you've blocked the fourth rank as well. So I mean, it's just a total disaster, this, for black. In one move, you're going from just slightly worse to 3.51 for white. You can try c3. Actually, this was something that the engines were doing, but they just sort of felt that this position was really, really nice for white. And you can see why. Yeah? This pawn, first of all, is stopping rook b4, so this knight on e4 is safe. And then you've just got these pawns to attack. King's not in great shape. This king is safe. For me, I'd say clear advantage for white. That's what I'd be thinking. The engines are just saying completely winning. So yeah, very unpleasant for black. So Keymer took on e4, rook takes b2, but now rook e6 happened, threatening f7 check. Queen h7, trying a sneaky mate on h2. And now, you can just pause the video if you like, try and work out how Stremavicius finished it off. It was very, very nice. He played the move f7 check. If rook f7, then we've got rook e8 check. King g7, queen f7, that's clear. And queen f7 is met by the very nice rook g6 check. So if you go king h7, I go queen h5 checkmate. And if you've got rook queen g6, I just go queen f8 and rook f7. And we're just winning the queen there. So Keymer tried the move queen h8, but then we got queen c3 check, and that was curtains. Hitting those two, actually black's only got the move queen g7, and now rook h6 check is checkmate. So there we are. That was a really nice game, I thought, from white. I thought both players played very creatively there, all the way. I loved Stremavicius' idea of queen f3 and then fg e5. I thought this was really, really good. But I thought Keymer reacted really, really well. But as I said, I think Keymer probably feeling that responsibility a bit of playing for Germany on board one, and really trying to make the maximum of his chances, and but just being a little bit out of form as well. Just somehow found a move that was logical, but that really destroyed a key part of his defensive capabilities, which was to be able to play the bishop to the diagonal and stop rook f1 from happening. But all credit to Stremavicius. He played absolutely beautifully, and it was a really, really nice game. I really enjoyed watching that one and analysing it as well. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm just going through some random stuff that I noticed and that made me happy whilst looking at chess and reading about chess in the past couple of weeks. Preparing a new series as well, which I'm really excited about, very excited about, and I hope you're going to enjoy as well. If you enjoyed the video, why not subscribe, like, take a look at my new books, tell your friends. And but anyway, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.